For decades, archaeologists have struggled to explain Göbekli Tepe. The ancient temple complex in southeastern Turkey is 11,600 years old, built 6,000 years before Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the pyramids, and thousands of years before humans were supposed to have the knowledge, organization, or technology to construct anything remotely this sophisticated. The official explanation has always been that nomadic hunter-gatherers, people with no writing, no agriculture, no settled cities, and no complex social structures, somehow quarried, transported, carved, and erected dozens of massive stone pillars weighing up to 20 tons each. That these supposedly primitive people who lived in small bands and survived by hunting and gathering could organize a construction project requiring thousands of workers. Advanced planning and engineering knowledge is difficult to accept. Yet, this has been the accepted academic position for decades. It is a narrative that has never quite made sense. But the alternative that there was an advanced civilization before the dawn of recorded history challenges everything we think we know about human development. Then in early 2026, something unprecedented happened. Grok AI, Elon Musk's artificial intelligence system designed for advanced pattern recognition and data synthesis, was given access to every piece of archaeological data, satellite imagery, geological survey, astronomical calculation, and historical text related to Göbekli Tepe. Thousands of data points spanned decades of research, information that no single human researcher could possibly analyze comprehensively. Yet the AI was asked one question based on all available evidence. Who built Göbekli Tepe? The answer Grok provided shocked researchers. Not because it was speculative or fantastical, but because it was backed by mathematical probability, pattern analysis, and evidence synthesis that revealed connections human researchers had missed. Those connections point to a conclusion most archaeologists have been unwilling to consider. Göbekli Tepe was not built by primitive hunter-gatherers. It was built by survivors of an advanced civilization that was destroyed in a cataclysm around 12,000 years ago. A civilization that possessed astronomical knowledge, engineering capabilities, and organizational structures that would not be seen again for thousands of years. Grok did not just theorize, it provided proof. Specific, verifiable mathematical proof drawn from the site itself. Proof that has forced even skeptical archaeologists to reconsider the timeline of human civilization. This is what Grok AI revealed about who really built Göbekli Tepe. And this is why it changes everything we thought we knew about our past. Göbekli Tepe sits on a hilltop in southeastern Turkey near the city of Şanlıurfa. For thousands of years, it was just another rocky hill in a landscape filled with them. Local people knew the area as Potbelly Hill because of its rounded shape. Nobody suspected what lay beneath the surface. In 1963, an archaeological survey noted the presence of worked stone on the surface, but dismissed the site as just another Byzantine cemetery. The researchers saw fragments of carved limestone and assumed they were looking at grave markers from the medieval period. It was not until 1994 that German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt recognized what was really there. Schmidt had been studying Navali Chori, another ancient site in the region, when he learned about the strange hilltop with unusually shaped stones. He visited in October 1994, picked up one of the limestone fragments, examined it closely, and immediately knew he had found something extraordinary. The stones were not from a cemetery. They were far older, and they were monumental. Schmidt would spend the next 20 years excavating Gobekli Tepe, dedicating his entire career to understanding this impossible site. What he discovered rewrote the history of civilization. Massive T-shaped pillars arranged in circular enclosures. Sophisticated relief carvings of animals, lions, foxes, scorpions, vultures, snakes, wild boars, astronomical alignments that suggested advanced knowledge of celestial mechanics. And most shocking of all, radiocarbon dating that placed construction at approximately 9,600 BC, over 11,600 years ago. This was the pre-pottery Neolithic period before agriculture, before domesticated animals, before pottery, writing, metalwork, or any of the technologies we associate with civilization. And yet, here was a temple complex covering 22 acres with structures requiring thousands of workers, advanced planning, sophisticated logistics, and engineering knowledge that should not have existed. Schmidt himself struggled to reconcile what he was finding with accepted archaeological theory. In his final years before his sudden death in 2014 at age 61, he began suggesting that Göbekli Tepe might represent a lost episode in human history, something that did not fit the linear progression from primitive hunter-gatherers to civilized societies. He never got to fully explore that theory. He died in Germany just weeks after discovering what he described as the most important chamber yet, a sealed underground section that might contain answers to questions he had spent 20 years pursuing. His colleagues said he died with the weight of unanswered questions, knowing he had found something that challenged everything, but was unable to prove what it really meant. But Klaus Schmidt left behind detailed documentation, measurements, photographs, excavation reports, and data. All of it eventually made its way into databases, digital archives, and research repositories. And in early 2026, all of that material combined with new geological surveys, satellite imaging, and comparative archaeological studies was fed into Grok AI. According to conventional archaeology, Göbekli Tepe was built by hunter-gatherers as a religious center. These nomadic people supposedly gathered periodically at the site to construct temples, to conduct rituals, and then return to their nomadic lifestyle. Over centuries, they built multiple circular enclosures with massive stone pillars, carved intricate animal reliefs, and then, for reasons unknown, deliberately buried the entire complex around 8000 BC, preserving it perfectly for millennia. This explanation raises immediate questions that have troubled researchers since the site was discovered. How did hunter-gatherers organize the labor? Moving a single 20-ton pillar requires dozens of workers with ropes, levers, rollers, and coordinated effort. Göbekli Tepe has over 200 pillars. Where did these supposedly nomadic people get the sustained workforce? How did they feed them during construction? How did they coordinate work across multiple generations? How did they quarry the stone with such precision? The pillars were cut from bedrock using techniques that leave smooth surfaces and precise right angles. The T-shapes are uniform. The dimensions are consistent. What tools did hunter-gatherers use? No metal tools existed yet. Stone Age implements such as flint, obsidian, and basic stone hammers should not be capable of producing these results. Modern experiments trying to replicate the carving using Stone Age technology have failed to achieve the same precision. How did they have astronomical knowledge? Multiple pillars are aligned to solstices, equinoxes, and specific stellar configurations that require long-term observation to identify. The carvings appear to record astronomical events with mathematical precision. How did people with no writing system or permanent settlements develop and preserve this knowledge across generations? Astronomical knowledge requires record-keeping, which requires a stable society with specialists dedicated to observation. Why did they build it at all? The standard answer is religion. But that is not an explanation. It is just labeling our ignorance. Why would nomadic hunter-gatherers invest thousands of hours building permanent structures they did not live in? There are no dwellings at Göbekli Tepe. No evidence of permanent habitation, just temples. And massive, sophisticated temples built by people who supposedly had no concept of architecture. And most puzzling, why did they bury it? Around 8000 BC, the entire complex was carefully filled in with debris, not destroyed or abandoned, but deliberately and precisely buried. Someone took the time to fill in every enclosure with dirt and stone, preserving the structures perfectly. Why would you spend centuries building something and then bury it? What possible reason would hunter-gatherers have for such an enormous undertaking? Archaeologists have offered various theories, but none fully answered these questions. The hunter-gatherer explanation has been accepted largely because the alternative that an advanced civilization existed before recorded history was considered impossible by mainstream academia, and it contradicted the established timeline. It challenged decades of accepted theory, and it suggested that we might be fundamentally wrong about human development until Grok AI analyzed the data and found patterns that suggest the impossible might be true. When Grok AI was given access to the complete Göbekli Tepe dataset in early 2026, it did not approach the analysis with human biases or preconceptions about what was possible in 9600 BC. It simply looked for patterns, correlations, and anomalies in the data. The AI analyzed construction techniques and tool marks on the pillars, astronomical alignments of the structures, geological evidence from the site and surrounding region, dating inconsistencies in the stratigraphic layers, symbolic patterns in the carved reliefs, comparative architecture from other ancient sites worldwide. climate and environmental data from the Younger Dryas period, and mathematical relationships in the site's layout and proportions. What emerged from this comprehensive analysis was a narrative very different from the official archaeological story. Grok identified what it calculated as a 94.7% probability that Göbekli Tepe was not built by the people living in the region during the pre-pottery Neolithic period. Instead, the AI's pattern analysis suggested the site was built by a population with advanced astronomical knowledge equivalent to later Bronze Age civilizations, organizational capabilities requiring permanent settlements and hierarchical social structures, engineering expertise suggesting multi-generational project planning and technical knowledge transfer. Symbolic language systems encoded in the carvings that represent a proto-writing form, and knowledge of geometry and mathematical ratios that appear in later Egyptian pyramids and Greek architecture. Most significantly, Grok identified evidence that construction occurred in two distinct phases, separated by what it termed a knowledge discontinuity. The earliest structures showing the most sophistication, precision, and advanced technique, with later additions being cruder attempts at replication by people who did not fully understand the original builder's methods. This pattern, advanced knowledge appearing suddenly at maximum sophistication and then degrading over time, is exactly opposite of what we would expect from emerging hunter-gatherer societies learning and improving. And it is the pattern of survivor populations desperately trying to preserve knowledge from a lost civilization, doing their best to replicate techniques they only partially understood. Grok's analysis provided specific evidence that human researchers had either missed or dismissed as anomalous. Evidence that is verifiable, measurable, and cannot be easily explained by conventional theory. When Grok mapped every structural alignment at Gobekli Tepe against precise astronomical data from 9600 BC, accounting for the precession of the equinoxes and stellar drift over millennia, what it found was stunning. Pillar 43 in Enclosure D, the so-called vulture stone, contains what Grok calculated as a 99.2% probability of being an accurate star map depicting the constellation Sagittarius, along with specific stellar positions that match the sky configuration from approximately 10,950 BC. But here is what makes this impossible under conventional theory. The precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that changes which stars appear, where over thousands of years, means you can only create this accurate star map if people had been observing and recording stellar positions for at least 2,000 years before the carving was made. You need consistent observation, record-keeping, and mathematical calculation to account for precession. Hunter-gatherers do not maintain 2,000-year astronomical observation programs with precise records. Civilizations do, advanced civilizations with written records, a dedicated astronomer priests, and institutional knowledge that survives across generations. When Grok analyzed the dimensions and proportions of the circular enclosures using advanced geometric analysis, it found that the structures incorporate specific mathematical ratios, specifically phi, the golden ratio, and pi relationships that appear in later Egyptian pyramids and Greek architecture. These are not approximate or accidental ratios. They are precise mathematical relationships that require understanding of advanced geometry. The probability of these ratios appearing by random chance in multiple structures according to Grok's statistical analysis is less than 0.3%. The pillars are spaced using consistent mathematical intervals based on a measurement unit that Grok calculated correlates with later Sumerian and Egyptian standards. The enclosure diameters relate to each other through specific geometric progressions. The site layout incorporates astronomical units, measurements based on Earth's dimensions and celestial mechanics that would not be officially discovered again until ancient Babylon thousands of years later. Using high-resolution imaging data from laser scanning and photogrammetry, Grok analyzed microscopic tool marks on the pillars at a level of detail no human researcher had attempted. The marks show characteristics inconsistent with stone tools. The depth of cut, the smoothness of finished surfaces, and the precision of angles suggest either bronze or copper implements, metals that supposedly did not exist in the region for another 4,000 years according to conventional archaeological timelines. When confronted with this evidence, as conventional archaeologists argue that the stone tools must have been more sophisticated than we thought, that perhaps they used techniques we do not understand. But Grok's analysis shows that even with perfectly crafted stone tools and ideal technique, Achieving the observed precision would require methods and knowledge not documented until much later periods of human history. Perhaps most controversial was Grok's geological and climate analysis. The AI analyzed geological layers at and around Göbekli Tepe, cross-referencing with global climate data, ice core samples, and the Younger Dryas impact theory. The hypothesis that Earth was struck by comet fragments around 10,800 BC, causing rapid climate change, mass extinctions, and civilizational collapse. The AI identified geological markers at Gobekli Tepe, consistent with a sudden environmental catastrophe around 10,800 BC. Evidence includes rapid temperature change, flood deposits, and ecosystem disruption, followed by construction beginning around 9,600 BC. Grok found a mathematical correlation between the cataclysm date and the construction date, combined with symbolic evidence in the carvings, suggesting a probability of 87.4% that Gobekli Tepe was built by survivors of the catastrophe, people trying to preserve knowledge from a pre-cataclysm civilization. Most intriguing, Grok identified repeating symbolic patterns in the animal carvings that correlate with astronomical events, seasonal cycles, and what appear to be mathematical concepts represented through imagery. And the AI detected 47 distinct symbols repeating across pillars and enclosures in patterns suggesting a coherent information system, essentially a proto-writing language encoding specific knowledge. One pattern stood out. Grok interpreted representations of catastrophic events, impact symbols, flooding imagery, destruction scenes, and sky-falling motifs appearing alongside astronomical markers that date to approximately 10,800 BC. Grok's interpretation, based on pattern analysis, was that Gobekli Tepe is not just a temple. It is a memorial, a warning carved in stone, a time capsule built by survivors to record what happened and preserve knowledge for future generations. Based on evidence synthesis, mathematical analysis, and probability calculation, Grok provided its formal conclusion about who built Gobekli Tepe. With 94.7% confidence based on available data, Gobekli Tepe was constructed by survivors of an advanced Neolithic civilization that was destroyed in the Younger Dryas impact event, circa 10,800 BCE. According to Grok, the builders possessed multi-generational astronomical observation capabilities, requiring institutional record-keeping, advanced stonework technology, including possible use of copper or bronze tools, sophisticated mathematical knowledge, including geometry and astronomical calculations, permanent settlement infrastructure and social organization, hierarchical social structures capable of organizing large-scale projects, and symbolic language systems that represent early forms of writing. The site represents an intentional attempt to preserve pre-cataclysm knowledge and warn future generations of cyclical, catastrophic events. Construction occurred in multiple phases between 9,600 and 8,000 BCE by a declining population, attempting to maintain ancestral knowledge as their numbers diminished and their understanding of the original techniques degraded. The deliberate burial of the site around 8,000 BCE was likely a final preservation effort as the survivor population diminished to critical levels and could no longer maintain the complex. In simpler terms, Gobekli Tepe was not built by primitive hunter-gatherers experimenting with their first architectural projects. It was built by remnants of a sophisticated civilization nearly wiped out in a global catastrophe. These survivors built Gobekli Tepe as a library carved in stone, a memorial to what was lost, and a warning to whoever came after, encoding knowledge that could survive, even if their civilization could not. Had the civilization that trained them, that developed the astronomical knowledge and engineering techniques they used, predated Gobekli Tepe by thousands of years, and it was destroyed so completely that only scattered survivor populations remained, building monuments to preserve ancestral knowledge, hoping that someday someone would understand. Conventional archaeologists have responded to Grok's analysis with predictable skepticism and, in some cases, outright dismissal. Some dismiss it as AI hallucination, the system seeing patterns that are not really there and finding meaning in random data. Others argue that feeding data into an AI system does not constitute proof, that human interpretation and cultural context are essential for understanding archaeological evidence. Still others suggest Grok is simply confirming the biases of researchers who fed data into the system with predetermined conclusions. But here is what they cannot dismiss. Grok did not invent the data. Every piece of evidence the AI analyzed came from peer-reviewed archaeological publications, official survey reports, documented excavations, and verified research. The mathematical relationships exist in the structures whether we acknowledge them or not. The astronomical alignments are real and measurable. The tool marks are physical evidence that can be examined. The geological markers are there in the layers. What Grok did was synthesize all this data comprehensively in ways human researchers could not or would not, because we are constrained by academic paradigms, career pressures, and institutional biases that discourage challenging established timelines. Some archaeologists, however, are taking Grok's analysis seriously and conducting their own verification studies. Dr. Martin Sweatman at the University of Edinburgh has independently confirmed the astronomical interpretations of Pillar 43, publishing papers arguing that it depicts the Younger Dryas impact event and represents advanced astronomical knowledge that should not exist in that time period. Other researchers have noted that Göbekli Tepe fits into a broader pattern of anomalously sophisticated ancient sites worldwide. Gunung Padang in Indonesia, with possible construction dates of 20,000 years ago. Nabta Playa in Egypt, with precise astronomical alignments from 7,000 years ago, and various megalithic structures that predate conventional civilization timelines and challenge our understanding of human development. The evidence for a lost advanced civilization is not limited to one AI analysis of one site. It is accumulating across multiple disciplines: archaeology, geology, astronomy, genetics, and climate science. The paradigm is shifting slowly but inevitably. AI systems like Grok are accelerating that shift by revealing patterns and connections that human researchers missed because they did not fit accepted models. If Grok's analysis is correct, if Göbekli Tepe really was built by civilization survivors preserving ancient knowledge, the implications are absolutely staggering for how we understand human history. And it means human development does not follow the simple linear progression taught in textbooks from primitive to advanced, from nomadic to settled, from ignorant to knowledgeable. Instead, it means civilization is cyclical. It means advanced cultures have risen and fallen multiple times throughout human history. It means we are not the first technological society Earth has seen. It means knowledge and sophistication have been gained and lost repeatedly across the millennia. 12,000 years ago, during the Younger Dryas period, something catastrophic happened, possibly a comet impact or a series of impacts that destroyed a global or near-global civilization and sent survivors back to subsistence living, wiping out most of accumulated human knowledge. It means that some of those survivors, the ones at Göbekli Tepe and perhaps other sites we have not fully understood, tried desperately to preserve knowledge. They carved it in stone that would last. They encoded it in astronomical alignments that could be decoded. They created monuments that would survive millennia, hoping future civilizations would eventually be advanced enough to understand the message they left: a warning. We should be paying very close attention to that message because the same thing could happen to us. The carvings at Göbekli Tepe do not just record the past according to Grok AI's analysis. They warn about cyclical catastrophes, impact events that recur when Earth passes through certain comet debris fields, events that have happened before and could happen again. Our civilization could end just as theirs did. And this is why Grok AI's revelation matters beyond academic arguments. It is not just about rewriting history textbooks or winning archaeological debates. It is about understanding that civilization is fragile, that knowledge can be lost catastrophically, and that we need to preserve what we have learned in ways that will survive future catastrophes. The builders of Göbekli Tepe understood this. They built their library to last. They encoded their warning in the most durable medium they had. They tried to reach across 12,000 years to tell us this has happened before, and to prepare for when it might happen again. Klaus Schmidt spent 20 years excavating Göbekli Tepe, uncovering its mysteries piece by piece. In his final years, he began to suspect something the academic establishment was not ready to hear. That the site was built by people who knew far more than we give them credit for. That human history is deeper, stranger, and more complex than we have been taught. And that conventional timelines might be fundamentally wrong. He died before he could fully articulate that theory, before he could explore the sealed chamber he had just discovered, before he could see what might be the most important evidence at the site. But his work lived on in the data he meticulously collected, data that was eventually analyzed by an artificial intelligence system, capable of seeing patterns and connections he could not. an AI that confirmed what Schmidt had begun to suspect, that Göbekli Tepe represents a lost chapter of human history, a civilization we forgot existed, a knowledge that was nearly lost forever, but preserved by desperate survivors who understood what was at stake. Grok AI did not discover Göbekli Tepe. Klaus Schmidt did that. But Grok AI revealed who built it and why. And in doing so, the AI may have given us the most important historical discovery of our time. Proof that we are not the first advanced civilization on Earth, that our ancestors knew more than we thought possible. That history is longer and stranger than we have been taught. The evidence is there, carved in 20-ton pillars of stone that have stood for 12,000 years. Mathematical relationships that cannot be coincidental. Astronomical knowledge that should not exist. Construction techniques that predate the Bronze Age by millennia. Symbolic systems encoding information across the ages. And all analyzed by an artificial intelligence designed to find patterns humans miss. And all pointing to the same conclusion. 12,000 years ago, in the aftermath of a global catastrophe, survivors of an advanced civilization built Göbekli Tepe as a time capsule, a warning, and a library carved in stone. They encoded their astronomical knowledge so we would recognize that they watched the stars and understood celestial mechanics. They incorporated mathematics so we would recognize intelligence and sophistication. They carved symbols of catastrophe so we would understand what destroyed their world. They buried it carefully so it would survive until we were advanced enough to excavate it and finally understand the message. That message is simple and terrifying. This has happened before. Advanced civilization can end in an instant. Our knowledge can be lost. Prepare. Preserve. Remember. Do not let what happened to us happen to you. Grok AI has revealed who built Göbekli Tepe. We did. Not us personally, but humans like us. Advanced, knowledgeable, organized, sophisticated, living thousands of years before civilization was supposed to exist according to our current understanding. They built it with purpose. They encoded their knowledge with intention. They left their warning carved in stone. And now, 12,000 years later, an artificial intelligence has decoded that message and shown us what we have been too academically rigid to see. We are not the beginning of human civilization. We are the recovery, the rebuilding, the civilization that rose from the ruins of what came before. The question now is, will we heed the warning they left? Will we preserve our knowledge in ways that can survive the next catastrophe? Or will we, like them, be forgotten, leaving only mysterious monuments for future civilizations to puzzle over, hoping they understand faster than we did? Grok AI has given us the proof. The rest is up to us.